When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, you knew it was going to be me anyway, didn't you? Yes, it's episode 76 of Join Up Dots. We're coming daily, 7 days a week. So if you've missed out on any of the episodes, jump back. They're all archived there for you. And if you have missed out on any of the episodes, why have you? I know who's not listening, and I will come after you. So let's introduce you to today's guest. He is a man who has quite simply travelled an unusual path to where he is today. Starting as a musician, working in the church full time, he worked hard at delivering the kind of music that inspires and touches the soul. But like all entrepreneurs that awake one day with a realisation that they aren't where they want to be in life, he was the same. He awoke one morning with a realisation that the potential that he knew was in him, just waiting to be unleashed on the world, was not being delivered to the people that could use it most. But who were those people? How can you transform from a church musician to a mover and shaker that is creating success all around them? Well, opportunities to find your true path in life can come from the most unexpected sources. And in our guest's case, it came from someone very close to home. Writing an advertisement for his wife's music studio, he was astonished and, of course, very pleased to find his ad produced 400% return on investment. And after selling 50 grand of pipe organs in 1 month, he realised that he'd made the step and created a real business that he could develop for himself and his flourishing portfolio of clients. So how did he do it? What strategies did he use to quite literally become a copywriting overnight success? And more importantly, why did that untapped passion lay dormant for so long? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots, the one and only Mr. James Clouser. How are you, sir?
Great, David. How are you?
I am always great, but I'll be honest, I was going through that whole introduction and I've got an itchy nose. It's driving me mad. So I need you to speak for the next 15 minutes while I just sort my itch out. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go ahead and take care of that. I got it.
Right, okay.
So
I think I'm back now. I think I'm back. I think I'm okay.
Oh,
the itch.
That was fast.
Yeah, I'm a quick itcher or scratcher. I'm not sure if it's an itch or a scratch. Your life, sir. It's an unusual one. It is an unusual one. Most of the guests that I interview and come on the show, you can almost see the path that they are on. But yours, there has been a first part of your life and a second part of your life. Do you feel that, or is that just me looking from the outside?
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. I came from a family that was a blue collar family. Grew up in a small town that was very dominant, very reliant on the steel industry. And, then when I was growing up, that industry began to fade. And the area that I grew up in and the family that I grew up in, suddenly my generation found itself, not firmly inside the middle class anymore. So I started, my life in that kind of very hardworking, not even middle class, but blue collar, sort of upbringing, with no real direction from my parents other than, try to get the hell out of here when you can. So that was
where
really
was
my
that,
story.
James? To give the sort of listeners an understanding of your area in America, whereabouts was that still works?
That's in the Youngstown, Ohio area. Probably the closest city that folks would know would be Pittsburgh, okay. Pennsylvania.
And is that a very kind of industrial area?
It is, yeah. Now, in Pennsylvania, they've adapted a little bit more to business, but in our eastern Ohio side of the border, they really never did. It's kind of unfortunate that that city has really become somewhat of a ghost town. Now they've had over 500 homes demolished in the past year because they've been vacant for so long. It's actually one of those situations where instead of there being urban renewal, they're actually leveling a lot of the buildings and they're basically de-urbanizing them. So it's an interesting part of the country.
So James, the area, obviously it's disappointing and upsetting for the families losing their livelihoods. But is it actually ultimately a good thing? Is it a transition from the new to the old, which is going to benefit the industry or at least the environment more than what was there previously?
Well, it was very much like that first scenario in Pittsburgh when the steel mills started to die out there, business started to take root. A lot of real estate, a lot of medical research. All those really big markets where there's a lot of growth. In the Youngstown area where I grew up, which is about an hour and a half west of Pittsburgh, that area never really did evolve, and I think a big piece of that really has to do with the mindset of the people there. It very much grew up with ideas like people who make a lot of money are bad, sort of villainizing them as being responsible for the world's woes, and very very much have a sense of this is the way that things are, and who do you think you are to do any better? So it's very limited in terms of the mindset, and when you get trapped in that kind of mindset, it makes it doubly difficult for someone to actually break out of it and want to do something different or want to improve their life, because they feel like they're wrong for doing that.
It is peer pressure, isn't it? We talk about this so much on many of the episodes, that the people that love you the most, i.e. your parents and your brother and sister and uncles and aunties and that, are quite often the people that anchor you, because they're the ones that are comfortable in their situation and they can't quite understand why you want to be going against the norm and pushing out into new worlds and creating a new environment for yourself. Now, you were saying that you didn't have much direction from your parents. Do you think that was just the mindset that they were in at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my dad was a fourth generation industrial electrician, so that kind of work went really far back in our family history, and my mom stayed at home with us. So, there really wasn't any sort of, influences around me, people that I could sort of look up to as being people who were really happy with what they were doing and making really good money doing it. That just wasn't in my awareness at all. In fact, when I went to college, it was sort of a cultural shock, because that was the first time when, ever really, got to see people sort of aspire to be anything other than a trade worker or a teacher or something like this, and it was just all sort of foreign to me. Like why would they want to do that kind of job? And for a long time, one of the things that really held me back, I think it's kind of a double-edged coin, but I was really not wanting to get into a corporate sort of situation. That was like the worst case scenario for me. So I really fought hard against, being in a cubicle, and that was both good and bad for different reasons. It was negative from the standpoint that I wasn't expanding my awareness to what was actually possible, and not realizing that I didn't necessarily have to do that in order to make more money.
Do you know? Do you know why you felt that? Now, when you look back and you sort of join up the dots, can you see why you felt so strongly that you were not going to go into corporate America?
Yeah, just a lot of that, programming from early childhood about, what does it mean if someone makes a lot of money, or, what are the motives of these big companies? They're all out to, destroy the country, or, to take advantage of our natural resources so that they could make more money, that they're not responsible, that they don't care about having a negative impact on the world, all these different kinds of things. And then, if you were a part of that, then you were sort of a co-conspirator in all of that.
Do you think making money now is a bad thing, or are you show me the money? Where's your point of view of it now?
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely show me the money. I'm making better money than anyone, in my family ever has. And my mom actually has kind of caught up to it a little bit. She still doesn't understand She doesn't understand the idea of actually being okay with what you really want in life. But my dad never really did, and so that's interesting because you know, he's said things, even though I am a um, six-figure entrepreneur now working on multiple six figures. You know, he's said things to my wife, you know, even after I started making pretty good money, things like, oh, you know, I know that you have your head screwed on straight. You know, he would say that to my wife, implying that, you know, I'm,
You're the
you know,
dreamer.
doing all this stuff. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But that's the thing that really is the key essence to all the shows. It's okay to dream, but that's only half the battle. You can have these dreams, but it's never going to come true without actually taking that action. So can you remember, you know, you were saying there was very little inspiration. You were just seeing people go into the mills or go into education and become teachers and stuff. Who was your inspiration then? What set you apart or set those people apart that you looked at and thought, yes, that's what I want to be?
I didn't really have anything like that. You know, and so the thing that I had going for me was that I was a very good pianist, and you know, while I didn't have a lot of guidance there, somehow I had the sense that, you know, if I went to college, the thing that I would do would be to study music, and so that's what I did. I went, you know, to college. Started out as a piano major, as a piano performance major. You know, but again, when I got into that environment, it was a very you know, foreign sort of environment, and I was only in college for 2.5 years before I dropped out, because you know, I just didn't understand the environment. I wasn't sold on the idea that I needed to go to college in the first place. I didn't know what I wanted to do on the other hand. And that was sort of the catch-22, was I really didn't have another plan, because when I would look out and you know, and I went to a really good school, a really well-known school, Case Western Reserve, it as one of the best top 10 music programs in the world. And, you know, even having had that happen was sort of a you know, interesting thing in itself, was really neat. But when I looked out on people going to law school or going to medical school or, you know, in business, you know, what I projected was all that stuff that I grew up with. And so it made me miserable to actually be in that environment, because it was sort of this double binding message from my family that, you know, in order to do better, you have to go to college. But it was almost like, well, you know, we want you to do better than us, but not that much better.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you were really a tortoise, weren't you? You just went, put your neck down, and tried to sort of blend in with the crowd, really.
Pretty much, yeah. And I was also, and I'm still somewhat like this, but sort of a lone wolf as well. You know, very introverted. You know, artistic types usually are. So that was another component to it, was that, you know, I had a couple of good friends in college who were sort of, you know, similar to me in how we grew up. But, you know, other than that, I didn't do much socializing. Of course, as a musician, you do a lot of practicing alone anyhow. So that, you know, I like that part of it. But yeah, it was just a very sort of confusing time for me.
It's amazing, isn't it, that we are so programmed from such an early age. And, you know, I'd like to think that I'm the most positive dad that I could possibly be to my kids. But I can already see that somehow I must have screwed up some way, because the little 3-year-old, 5-year-old version of my kids, who were so, I can do anything and really positive and the world is going to be brilliant, somehow they've lost that. And now they are, oh, I don't know why I should be doing this, or oh, it's too much hard work. There's a programming that goes on, which I almost wish that we could grab people and put them into a positive environment where they're not going to be touched by people that will bring them down, because you cannot fight it, can you? You cannot fight it. And it doesn't matter if you're in America or the United Kingdom or Africa, you are a symptom of the environment that you find yourself in, and there's no way of getting around that.
Right. That's certainly true of children very young. And I have two girls as well, so we're always cognizant of that, 4 and 5 year old girls. So we're very much, try to stay aware of that as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
When you had that morning, when you woke up with a realization that you had potential, was that an epiphany, or was that something that had been bubbling away under the surface for ages? I mean, you suddenly thought one day, right, I've got to do something.
Yeah, it was sort of both actually. It was bubbling up. It had been bubbling up for a while because after I went through my college years, I actually had a lot of success as a performing musician. I got to do some really interesting concert tours and won some competitions and things like that that really sort of jump started a concert career. But the other side of that was that as a musician, you also have to, have some kind of, most people have to have a full-time job at an organization to be around that type of work all the time, to really be in a music career. It's just, how the economy is right now. So that's where I ended up in church work because it was pretty good paying. I mean, it gave me a middle class salary, but I kind of found myself in a place where it started to feel a little bit too much like that cubicle, and on top of that, the last job that I had in music was a very unhealthy work environment as well. And I knew that, and I didn't take responsibility for walking away from it in the beginning because the pay was really good, and I was sort of making the excuse, well, I should just do this because the money's good, and I didn't think that I could do much better without having to move across the country to get another position. So I stayed there, and that the relationship that I had with my superiors was not very good. There was a lot of tension between the organization and them. Both of my direct superiors had been asked to leave the position several times. I got kind of caught into the middle of that, and at some point I got myself involved in that a little bit too much, and it came down to a confrontation that eventually led to me being let go from that position. And it was kind of like at the time it was like, I'm just not doing this anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I felt completely okay walking away from that position. They had to pay me severance because in our state there isn't anything, there aren't any laws around wrongful termination, but the HR department determined that it was wrongful termination, so they had to pay me severance or whatever.
I find it amazing, just to jump in, that number one, you get paid to work in a church. I just thought it was volunteers. Whenever I've been in a church, and it's once in a blue moon, probably a wedding, it's some old lady who just seems to have just walked around the corner and sat on the organ and played a few tunes. So I'm amazed. Is that common in America? And also that you have a HR department in the church?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was a large church. I mean, yeah, you have it's the same, pretty much the same in the UK. You have a lot more churches that have part-time positions or volunteer positions than you do larger churches that have full-time positions. But yeah, there are quite a few churches in the bigger metropolitan areas, and also in England too. There are larger churches where, some of those positions require 60 to 80 hours a week. And a lot of people don't know that, but it's just like any other organization. Only, churches have a music department. So it's almost like if you think of a school, like a director of a music school, it would be those kinds of responsibilities.
I'd never looked at it in that way at all. I just kind of feel like the churches exist. The vicar or the priest or whatever lives around the corner. He comes in and does his little thing, and that's it. And everything else was volunteers and stuff. I absolutely had no idea. You've taught me something new there.
Yeah, a lot of them are like that. You're right.
So you're in that bad situation, and your colleagues are not getting on, and you're in the crossfire. Obviously, that was a bad time for you. I can imagine, going in each day thinking, oh, God, here we go again. But when you look back on it, is it a truth that actually you wouldn't be here now if you hadn't have been forced to leave that? Was that the thing that really pushed you on?
Yeah, absolutely. It was I think it was being willing to just jump off the train, knowing that the train was going somewhere really bad. And that, jumping meant probably breaking some bones, but ultimately being better off, and just having that faith that that's what the situation was probably the best thing that I've done in the past 2 years. You know, um, I've heard other people's stories like this where you hear about entrepreneurs who have accomplished really great things, who they came to a point where they left their job, they didn't have a plan B. I was kind of aware of that a little bit from people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and those guys, because I had a little bit of a techie background too, and I guess that's probably where that came from. I just had that faith that, okay, I know that jumping off this train is going to mean getting roughed up, but I'm not willing to put up with this anymore and live this kind of life anymore. So I just did it. I just let go of that. And, that's kind of where that story about writing the ad for my wife came in. That was almost immediately after that, because I was just scrambling to figure out what I could do.
I find that hugely inspirational, and I've written that down, how you were willing to jump off the train because you knew that train was going to a bad place. And all our listeners out there who are in rubbish jobs and got a manager that they don't like and blah, 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 there's other jobs. And it doesn't have to be the perfect job straight away. You might go to another rubbish job. But if you want it hard enough and you're passionate and you take action, you will find yourself in a better place. And I'm not just saying that because I'm on the mic and I'm having an easy life and stuff. I've been where you have been, and I jumped off that train just like James did. And to be honest, as I jumped, I realised that it was the best thing I ever did. And I actually realised as I was flying into the air off that train, why the hell didn't I do this earlier? Because once you do that and you land on the ground, you realise it's not so scary. And it's the scariness of the unknown that roots us all in positions that are not good for us. But we stay and we put up with it day in, day out. Did you feel that, James?
Yeah, right on, David. I think it's an illusion. That fear creates this illusion that what's going to happen if I jump, and you start imagining all these different situations. It's kind of like that, I think, too, with sales, when people are first starting to learn how to sell their product or service. If they're an entrepreneur, it's the same sort of thing. Like, what's going to happen if I make this sales call, and you start letting all these illusions and things sort of dictate your actions. But the truth of the matter is, if you're standing on the edge of that train car, that freaking train is probably going to an incinerator. You know what I mean? I mean, that's staying on means basically killing your dream. And I didn't know at that time that that's where I was headed. But had I known that, like you did, I think I would have jumped a little sooner. Kind of looking back on all of it.
I jumped, and it was interesting you were saying about people that jump without a plan B. I had no plan B, absolutely no plan B at all. And if this doesn't pan out doing this, then God knows, because I can't go back to corporate land. That's just not in me anymore. I don't want to start a brick and mortar. This is it. I've got to make this a success. And it's not scary. I actually find that invigorating, that this is it. This is my focus. This is all I've got to do. All I've got to do is make this a success. And it's the first time in my life that I've actually got both hands and both eyes on something, and I'm moving something forward, and I can see that progress. And you can do it. You can really do it. And don't sit there watching television in the evening. crack on with it, and little by little those incremental gains means that suddenly you're selling 50 grand of pipe organs in 1 month, and you look back and you think, how the hell did this happen? Oh yes, it's because I did this and this and this and this.
Yep, absolutely. Have you told your listeners the story of Cortez? Have you ever heard the burning the ships story?
You tell it now. You tell it.
Okay, yeah, because this is perfect. So when Cortez landed in the Americas, and he would, the armies were basically there to impose martial law on the natives. When they got off the ships, he ordered the ships to be burnt. His own ships to be burned, and he turned to the army and said, boys, the ships have been burned. You're either going to win or die. And I think that's how you have to look at it.
I do now, but it's taken me years. It's wasted years. Or, well, no, say wasted. Mm-hmm. I think I've learned so much in those, quote, wasted years that I'm now bringing to fruition at this moment. So I couldn't do this without those wasted years. But still, now I'm doing it, and now I'm speaking to people like you that are doing it, and an hour later I'm speaking to somebody else who's doing it. I just think we should all do it. We should all do it. And, the only people in the world that are getting truly rich are either people taking action or employers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing where, I don't think people realize, and, this kind of goes back to my upbringing a little bit. I didn't realize that, doing things like sales could actually be fun, or like you said, invigorating, or stepping up to take the next challenge in your business, because it's usually always the thing that you don't want to do, right? That could actually be the thing that, it's like, I guess, if you were, skiing or something and you didn't know how to ski, that if you're going to go down a huge peak and you don't know how to ski, that would probably scare the crap out of you. But if you did know how to ski, it would be exciting, right? Like you were saying. And I don't think people realize that it's not, you're always going to have those things that are, it's like the next challenge, and it seems like it's bigger than you, when really it's not. And once you actually break through that, then, it's exciting to do it and to actually like step up and be at the next level, to actually be that person that you want to get the results that you're looking for. You have to kind of step into that, and it's exciting to do that.
When I was in corporate land many years ago, for the last few years, I would say I coasted. I really did. I think my spirit was leading me towards this path. The train hadn't got up to speed, but it was certainly on its way to that bad place. But when I was in corporate land, I did really well for myself, and I got quite high up the ladder. But when I got to that ladder, I didn't know where to go. I kind of felt like I was almost on the wrong ladder then. But since I've been doing this, I realised that if I got to the top of that ladder, actually I'm at the lowest rung of the next ladder. And then you have to work on that. And the guys that are really kicking it out there are the guys that have just kept on climbing. And they haven't looked down. They've just kept on climbing up the top of that ladder onto the next ladder and keep on going. And when they get to the top, they don't rest. They keep on going again. And the weird thing is, that's the fun bit, isn't it, James? That's the bit that actually does get you out of bed each morning, or when you're really tired at night, you just put in another couple of hours, just go those another couple of rungs up that ladder, because you know that you are doing it for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it becomes exhilarating when you're first starting to do this. I think there's a period for everyone where, and I know it's this way for me, where it's like, oh, I have to figure out what I'm going to offer. Some people already are like, are coming from a place where they already have a product or service, and that's fine too. And then you still have to find an audience, of course, for that offer. But there are so many little things, and I don't think there's anyone that goes through the very beginning without experiencing a lot of disappointment. But you get to the point then where you start breaking through a lot of those challenges, and just like you said, it is a lot of fun. That is the the journey of business. It's not necessarily, ending up at this place that you've always dreamed of being. It's always, taking that next step and doing more.
Well, let's bring on, at this point of the show, the words of Steve Jobs, which is really the theme of the show. And he spoke back in 2005 about only knowing his future when he looked back and joined up the dots. I'm going to play these words, and I'm going to ask your feelings about them. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
So, true or not, James, those words to you personally?
Yeah, absolutely true. And I think I would add to that, the person that you become as you connect those dots isn't the same person you're going to be today. It's almost like the person you are now wants a certain result. So it's like you want to replace your salary, right? Or you want to make $100,000 a year or whatever it is. But when you get to that level, you won't be the same person that you are today. And so you have to, I think you really do have to have that faith that taking that action and, being the person that, reaches that goal, being that successful owner, being that six-figure business owner, who's thriving, to actually step into that role. And like he says, looking back, everything will make sense. Some of the things will work out and some of them won't, but it's all about, pushing forward and having that faith.
What was your big dot in life? What was the dot that really did change your life? Was it that advertisement that you wrote, or was it the fact that you had that epiphany, that you just had that desire in you to make a life for yourself? Can you focus in on when your life started moving to where it is now?
Yeah, I think it must have been the day after I left my job, when I woke up and just realized that anything was possible from there. Like I pretty much at that point figured that I was going to have to move to get another job as good as the one that I had, because I was living in an area where I was kind of at the top of my opportunity. And at that point that, pretty much was anything was possible. And, why am I settling for what I'm doing? And I think it was just that needing to know, what am I actually capable of in life? Am I going to continue to just kind of make incremental progress in my income through, raises and things like that? Or am I actually going to go out and do the things that I really want to do with my life?
Did it scare you, though? It must have scared you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely did. But I think there was more of me that wondered how I could do it than there was saying that I couldn't. That I just had to know.
So what makes you different from hopefully not, all our listeners out there who are frightened of taking that leap of faith? What was it that made you go, okay, I know I'm scared, I know it could blow up in my face, but I've still got to do it?
Well, I think it was the question, what's going to happen if I don't? Are you going to continue to stay in the job that's not fulfilling you? I mean, we only get so much time on this planet. And, anybody who's on the call, if I were to talk to them, I could probably, find out, what are you really passionate about in life? What does life look like in your dreams? And we tend to suppress that, because we're taught to do that. We're taught to be good employees. But the truth of the matter is that it's just a choice for you to actually break free of that and to have the kind of life that you really want. that it's not, that there's nothing special about me per se. There's nothing really special about David either in terms of us being able to do it. It's just a decision, and allowing yourself to actually make that decision and then saying, okay, I've made a decision and this is what I'm doing. Come hell or high water, I'm not living like this anymore.
For anyone who's having a degree of success, it is actually lucky days, isn't it? That so many people aren't willing to take that leap. It means that the competition is less.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's surprising looking back, isn't it? It's like, oh, I overcame that. Why can't why can't other people overcome that? But then you have to apply some awareness to it when you're going through your next challenge. It's all relative, I mean, where I'm going now requires me to stretch more than I've ever stretched before. It's a little bit easier than it was when I was just starting out. I think it always gets easier, but you learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and when you can do that, that's when you start making a lot of progress. So yeah, it takes a lot of grit, I think.
So where are you going, James? What is your plan? Your copywriting business is flourishing, so how do you take that to the next level? Well,
at this point, I'm really starting to target some companies that have a lot of brand awareness, much bigger companies that I can work with on more of a contractual basis, and then I'll be looking to sort of expand my team to be able to scale what I deliver to those. To those companies. So I've been sort of a one-man show for a while. My wife last year left her job to join me in the company as a business manager. Next for us is going to be probably finding someone to partner with it to kind of help me on the marketing campaigns that we do for these larger companies, so that we can actually go out there and get more accounts, and then be able to fulfill all of our clients' needs.
So you are the wife's boss.
Yes, well, in some ways, and then in other ways.
No,
don't
don't just go yes, and then I will edit it all out, and then we'll play it back.
Perfect.
Yeah, and she'll love this episode. She'll say, James, why did you say that? So this is the very end of the show now, and this is the bit when I want to take you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back into a room and stumble across the young James, what would you say to him? What advice would you give him? So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic. Ooh, ah, ooh,
here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic. Ooh, ah, ooh.
Little James, this is Big James, and I'm coming back in time to tell you that you need to stop settling for just getting by, and that there's a much bigger future waiting for you. You're going to go out and you're going to kick ass, and at times you're not going to know exactly how you're going to do that, but it's going to happen. When you just go out there, you have to jump off that train, get off that wheel and go out there, take action, keep at it, take all the negative stuff that comes and just throw it to the side and say, that's not what that's not what my goal is. This is my goal. Stay focused on it, and you're going to be just fine.
It's been an absolute delight speaking to you, James. It really has. And I'm sure that many of our listeners would like to contact you as well. So how can people connect with you?
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and give you an email address. And if anybody would like any help with their copywriting, I'm willing to do a complimentary critique for them when they write me at info@jamesclouser.com. I'll spell that It's James Clouser, CLOUSER.com. Info at.
And of course, I can find your website, and you're on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all the other normal places.
All those places, yep.
I will put those on the show notes. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots, James. Please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I'm fascinated to know what's going to happen to you in the next few years as you continue to be the boss of your wife. See, I've said it again, so she's definitely going to know that. I do believe that the only way to build our futures is actually by looking back and connecting our past, and that's what you've done today. So, James Clouser, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.